The soft hum of the office air conditioning was Sarah Mitchell's only companion as she pored over the blueprints spread across her desk. The proposed children's hospital project had consumed her evenings for the past 3 weeks, but tonight she felt closer than ever to finalizing the details. Her coffee had long since gone cold, forgotten among the stacks of permit applications and environmental impact reports. The wall clock ticked steadily toward 9 p.m., its rhythm matching her heartbeat as she made careful notes in the margins of the plans. The hospital would transform an abandoned lot into a state-of-the-art medical facility, bringing hope and healing to families who currently had to drive 2 hours to the nearest children's specialty center. Sarah smiled as she traced the outline of the planned rooftop garden, her personal addition to the design. Her phone buzzed, displaying a message from her assistant. "Don't forget, 8 a.m. presentation to the board of directors tomorrow." Sarah glanced at her reflection in the office window, noting the determination in her eyes despite the late hour. Being the youngest mayor in the city's history came with its pressures, but moments like these, working to make real change, made every challenge worthwhile. She began gathering her documents, carefully rolling the blueprints into their protective case. The sound of the cleaning staff's vacuum in the hallway reminded her she wasn't the only one working late. Sarah waved to Mr. Chen, who had been maintaining the building's pristine condition for over 2 decades. He paused his work to return her greeting with a warm smile. "Another late night, Mayor Mitchell?" he asked, leaning on his vacuum handle. "The children's hospital won't build itself," she replied, patting the blueprint case. "How's your granddaughter doing in her new school?" Mr. Chen beamed with pride. "Top of her class in mathematics. She wants to be an architect now. Says she'll design buildings that help people, just like your projects." Sarah's heart warmed at his words. These were the moments that reminded her why she ran for office in the first place. The chance to inspire change, no matter how small. She made a mental note to invite his granddaughter to the groundbreaking ceremony once the hospital project was approved. Gathering her belongings, Sarah powered down her laptop and tucked it into her leather briefcase, a gift from her mother when she won the election. The worn leather reminded her of her mother's words, "Lead with your heart, but never forget to use your head." The elevator ride to the parking garage gave her a moment to review her mental checklist for tomorrow's presentation. The board of directors could be tough, but she had done her homework. Every potential question had an answer, every concern a solution. She had spent months building community support for the project, gathering data, and ensuring the plans met every regulatory requirement. As she approached her car, Sarah noticed the garage's fluorescent lights reflecting off its recently washed surface. The simple sedan was a deliberate choice. She believed in fiscal responsibility, starting with her own choices. Settling into the driver's seat, she placed the blueprint case carefully in the back, ensuring it wouldn't roll during the drive home. The clock on her dashboard read 9:15 p.m. as she started the engine. With any luck, she'd have time to review her presentation notes one final time before bed. As she pulled out of the parking garage, Sarah couldn't help but feel optimistic about tomorrow. Little did she know, the evening had other plans in store. The gentle hum of Sarah's car filled the quiet night as she navigated the familiar streets of downtown. Streetlights cast long shadows across the road, their amber glow illuminating the empty sidewalks. Her mind wandered to tomorrow's presentation, mentally rehearsing key points about the children's hospital's community impact. The flash of blue and red lights in her rearview mirror startled her from her thoughts. Sarah checked her speedometer. She had been driving exactly at the limit. With practiced calm, she signaled and pulled over to the curb, positioning her car well out of traffic's way. Her hand settled at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel as she waited, heart beating a steady rhythm against her ribs. The patrol car's spotlight filled her mirrors, making it impossible to see the approaching officer. Sarah rolled her window down, letting the cool night air fill the car. She could hear the measured steps on the asphalt, the subtle creak of duty boots drawing closer. "License and registration, please," Officer James Reynolds spoke, his flashlight beam sweeping across the car's interior. Sarah noticed his nameplate catching the light as she reached slowly for her purse. "Of course, officer," she replied, her voice steady and professional. "My registration is in the glove compartment. I'll get that for you next." Officer Reynolds watched as she retrieved her license, his expression unreadable behind the bright beam of his flashlight. Sarah handed over her license and reached for the glove compartment, movements deliberate and unhurried. "Do you know why I pulled you over tonight?" he asked, studying her license under the beam of his light. "No, sir, I don't," Sarah responded truthfully, handing him her registration. "I was being careful to observe the speed limit." The officer's flashlight beam moved to the blueprint case in her backseat. "You rolled through the stop sign at Maple and 4th, came to a rolling stop, but not a complete one." Sarah's brow furrowed slightly. She clearly remembered making a full stop, checking both ways before proceeding. The children's hospital site was actually visible from that very intersection. She had paused specifically to envision the completed project. "Officer Reynolds," she began respectfully, "I'm certain I came to a complete stop. I actually took a moment there to look at the empty lot across the street. It's the site of a new development project." The officer's pen scratched against his notepad, seemingly unmoved by her explanation. "That's not what I observed, ma'am. I need you to stay in your vehicle while I run your information." Sarah sat quietly, watching in her side mirror as Officer Reynolds returned to his patrol car. The blueprint case caught her eye again, reminding her of all the work ahead. A traffic ticket was an unwelcome complication, but she remained focused on the bigger picture. Minutes ticked by, marked by the rhythmic flash of the patrol car's lights. Finally, Officer Reynolds returned, ticket book in hand. His flashlight beam once again swept across her car's interior before settling on the citation he was writing. "I'm issuing you a citation for failing to come to a complete stop," he stated, tearing the ticket from his book. "You can either pay the fine or contest it in court. All the information is printed here, including your court date if you choose to contest." Sarah accepted the ticket with composed dignity, her mind already made up. She knew what she had done, and she would contest this citation. "Thank you, Officer Reynolds. Have a safe night." As the patrol car pulled away, Sarah studied the ticket under the dome light. The court date was in 2 weeks, the day after the board's final vote on the hospital project. She placed the citation carefully in her briefcase, started her engine, and proceeded home with extra attention to every stop sign along the way. The municipal courthouse stood tall against the morning sky, its brick facade warmed by the early sunlight. Sarah arrived 45 minutes early, her navy blue suit crisp and professional. She had chosen it carefully. Elegant but not flashy, projecting quiet confidence rather than power. The security guard greeted visitors with practiced efficiency as the metal detector beeped steadily. Inside the building, the hallway buzzed with nervous energy. Sarah found herself in line behind a young mother struggling to keep her toddler entertained while juggling a diaper bag and court documents. The child's face scrunched up, warning signs of an impending meltdown clear in his reddening cheeks. "Here," Sarah said softly, reaching into her briefcase. "I always keep a few of these for long meetings." She pulled out a wrapped granola bar, and after a questioning glance at the mother for permission, handed it to the child. The boy's face lit up, crisis averted. "Thank you." The mother sighed, relief evident in her voice. "We've been here since 8, and everything's taking longer than expected." Sarah smiled understandingly. "The waiting is always the hardest part. I'm Sarah, by the way." "Lisa," the young mother replied, helping her son unwrap the snack. "First time here." "For traffic court, yes," Sarah answered, not mentioning her previous visits for city business. She noticed Lisa's hands trembling slightly as she checked her ticket for the 10th time. "Would you like me to hold your bag while you get those papers organized?" Lisa's grateful smile answered before her words could. As Sarah held the diaper bag, she noticed other waiting citizens watching their interaction. The simple act of kindness seemed to break the tension in the hallway, and several others began quietly chatting among themselves. The courthouse doors opened precisely at 8:45 a.m., and the bailiff began directing people to their seats. Sarah found herself in the third row, her briefcase tucked neatly under the wooden bench. She pulled out a small notebook, reviewing her notes about the stop sign incident one final time. The courtroom itself was impressive, with high ceilings and dark wood paneling that spoke of tradition and authority. Morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Sarah observed as court staff prepared for the day, their movements efficient and practiced. "All rise." The bailiff's voice rang out at 9 a.m. sharp. Judge Harrison entered, his black robe flowing as he took his seat at the bench. His reputation for running a strict courtroom was immediately apparent in his brisk manner and direct gaze. "Be seated," he commanded, already reaching for the first case file. "We have a full docket today, so we'll proceed quickly. When your name is called, approach the podium immediately." Sarah watched as the first few cases moved rapidly. The judge's questions were sharp, his decisions quick and seemingly final. He showed little patience for explanations, cutting off several defendants mid-sentence. When one man tried to present photos as evidence, Judge Harrison barely glanced at them before making his ruling. Lisa's case came up early. Sarah gave her an encouraging nod as she walked to the podium, her son now quietly coloring in the back row with a court volunteer. The judge's eyes never left his papers as he reviewed her case, his pen moving swiftly across the forms. As the docket progressed, Sarah took mental notes of the judge's pattern. He seemed to prefer immediate admission of guilt with promises to pay promptly. Those who attempted to explain their circumstances often received harsher fines. The realization strengthened her resolve. This wasn't just about a traffic ticket anymore. It was about the principle of being heard. "Sarah Mitchell." Judge Harrison's voice cut through the courtroom air with practiced authority. Sarah rose smoothly from her seat, straightening her suit jacket as she approached the podium. The morning light streaming through the tall windows caught the silver thread in the judge's robe as he shuffled through his papers without looking up. "Another rolling stop violation," he stated rather than asked, his tone suggesting he'd seen hundreds just like it. "How do you plead?" Sarah stood straight, her voice clear and measured. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I came to a complete stop at the intersection of Maple and 4th. The judge's pen paused mid-signature, and he glanced up briefly, seeming mildly irritated at the unexpected response. "Officer Reynolds is one of our most experienced traffic officers. His record shows no previous complaints about his citations." "I respect Officer Reynolds' service," Sarah replied diplomatically, "but in this instance, I distinctly remember making a complete stop. I was actually taking a moment to look at the vacant lot on the corner." Judge Harrison leaned back slightly, his chair creaking in the hushed courtroom. "Ms. Mitchell, everyone who comes before this court has a story about why they weren't in violation. Do you have any actual evidence to support your claim?" "Yes, Your Honor," Sarah responded, reaching into her briefcase. "I've obtained footage from the security camera at the First Bank building on that corner. I've also prepared a brief showing the camera's angle relative to the intersection." The judge's eyebrows rose marginally as Sarah presented the documents to the bailiff. He hadn't expected such thorough preparation for a simple traffic case. The bailiff handed him the materials, and he began reviewing them with what appeared to be reluctant interest. "You went to considerable trouble for a minor traffic ticket," he observed, his tone suggesting he found it excessive. "The principle matters, Your Honor," Sarah answered. "The intersection in question is the future site of our new children's hospital. I had specifically stopped to consider the traffic pattern changes we'll need once construction begins." Judge Harrison's pen tapped against his desk as he studied the security camera stills. The images clearly showed Sarah's car coming to a complete stop, waiting the required time, and then proceeding carefully through the intersection. "And your interest in this construction project is?" he asked, still not fully looking up from the evidence. "I'm overseeing its development," Sarah replied simply, keeping her tone professional and matter-of-fact. She noticed a slight shift in the judge's demeanor as he processed her response. The courtroom had grown unusually quiet. The normal shuffling of papers and whispered conversations had ceased as other waiting citizens listened to the exchange. Even the court clerk had paused in her typing, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "You oversee municipal development projects." Judge Harrison finally looked up fully, studying Sarah with newfound attention. "Among other responsibilities, yes," Sarah confirmed, maintaining her composed demeanor. "The Children's Hospital project has been in development for 18 months. We're actually scheduled to break ground next quarter." The judge's expression shifted subtly as he processed this information. His next question carried a different tone, one tinged with dawning recognition. "And these other responsibilities you mention?" Before Sarah could respond, the young clerk who had been typing court records suddenly stood up, hurrying toward the bench with a tablet in hand. Her shoes clicked rapidly across the polished floor as she approached Judge Harrison, urgency evident in every step. The judge held up his hand, signaling Sarah to wait as he accepted the tablet from the clerk. His eyes scanned the screen, and for the first time that morning, Harrison's air of detached authority faltered slightly. Judge Harrison's eyes moved across the tablet screen, each word seeming to carry new weight. The clerk stood quietly beside the bench, her posture suggesting there was more to come. The judge adjusted his reading glasses, looking again at the security footage photos spread before him, then back to the tablet's display. "Mayor Mitchell," he said finally, his voice carrying a markedly different tone, "of Riverside City." A soft murmur rippled through the courtroom. Sarah remained poised at the podium, her expression unchanged. "Yes, Your Honor. Though today I'm simply here as a citizen regarding a traffic citation." The judge set the tablet down carefully, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. The morning light caught the edge of his glasses as he looked at Sarah with new consideration. The previous case's rapid pace had evaporated, replaced by a thoughtful silence. "The clerk informs me," Judge Harrison continued, "that you recently secured federal funding for the Children's Hospital project you mentioned. Quite an achievement for a first-term mayor." "It was a team effort, Your Honor," Sarah responded modestly. "Many people worked hard to make that project possible, which is why I was at that intersection so late, reviewing the final proposals before our board meeting." The judge's fingers drummed lightly on his desk as he processed this information. The security camera footage seemed to demand his attention again, and he picked up the photos for another look. The timestamp clearly showed Sarah's car at a complete stop, the evening shadows long across the pavement. In the gallery, Lisa, the young mother from earlier, leaned forward slightly. Her son had fallen asleep in her lap, the remnants of Sarah's granola bar still clutched in his small hand. Other observers watched intently, sensing the shift in the courtroom's atmosphere. "Mayor Mitchell," Judge Harrison spoke again, removing his glasses, "your evidence appears quite thorough. The security footage is particularly compelling." He paused, selecting his next words carefully. "However, I'm curious why you didn't mention your position earlier." Sarah's response was measured and clear. "Your Honor, I believe every person who enters this courtroom deserves equal consideration under the law. My title shouldn't influence the handling of a simple traffic citation." The judge glanced around his courtroom, noting the attentive faces of those still waiting for their cases to be heard. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting the room in full light now. His earlier brisk efficiency felt distant compared to the present moment's wait. "A refreshing perspective," he acknowledged, turning his attention back to the evidence before him. "The security footage clearly shows a full stop at the intersection, combined with your documentation of the camera angle and timing." He straightened the papers on his bench. "The citation appears to have been issued in error." Sarah maintained her professional demeanor, though a subtle smile touched the corners of her mouth. "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge raised his gavel, then paused. The clerk who had brought the tablet still stood nearby, and she seemed to be fighting back a smile of her own. Judge Harrison looked once more at the gallery of waiting citizens, then back to Sarah. "Case dismissed," he declared, the gavel striking with finality. But instead of immediately calling the next case, he added, "And Mayor Mitchell, I look forward to seeing the progress on the Children's Hospital project. It seems our community is fortunate to have such dedicated leadership." The next case remained uncalled as Judge Harrison took an unexpected moment to shuffle through his morning docket. The subtle sounds of papers moving seemed amplified in the courtroom's charged atmosphere. Several attorneys in the gallery had pulled out their phones, quietly confirming what they had just witnessed. Sarah gathered her documents with unhurried grace, placing them back in her briefcase. As she turned to return to her seat, she noticed Lisa giving her a warm smile from the gallery. The young mother's expression carried a mix of admiration and understanding. She had shared granola bars with the mayor without even knowing it. "If I may, Your Honor," Sarah said, pausing at the podium, "I'd like to share something about the Children's Hospital project, since you expressed interest." Judge Harrison looked up, his earlier impatience replaced by genuine attention. "Please proceed, Mayor Mitchell." Sarah turned slightly to address both the judge and the gallery. "The hospital will serve families within a 100-mile radius, providing specialized care that many currently travel hours to receive. Every traffic pattern, every stoplight, every crosswalk around that intersection has been carefully planned with those families in mind." The judge nodded thoughtfully, his pen now still on his desk. The morning light caught the American flag behind his bench, its shadows dancing across the wall as a gentle breeze moved through the air conditioning vents. "That's why I contested this citation," Sarah continued. "Every detail matters when we're building something that will serve our community for generations. Even a simple stop sign represents the safety of future patients and their families." A few members of the gallery nodded in agreement. Among them, Sarah recognized Mr. Chen's granddaughter, the aspiring architect, sitting in the back row with a notebook open on her lap. The young girl was sketching what appeared to be the courthouse's facade, adding her own creative touches to the design. "Your commitment to detail is commendable," Judge Harrison remarked, his tone carrying new respect. "It's refreshing to see such thorough preparation, both in your defense today and in your civic planning." Sarah smiled warmly. "Thank you, Your Honor. If you're interested, we're hosting a community forum next week about the hospital's design features. We welcome all public servants who'd like to learn more about the project's impact on our judicial and emergency response systems." The judge actually smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown all morning. "I appreciate the invitation, Mayor Mitchell. I imagine understanding the upcoming changes to our district would be beneficial." As Sarah returned to her seat, she noticed Officer Reynolds, who had been sitting quietly in the witness area. He was reviewing his notes with renewed interest, perhaps seeing the intersection and his own role in the community's future in a new light. The courtroom's atmosphere had transformed. The earlier tension had given way to something more collaborative, more community-minded. Even those still waiting for their cases seemed less anxious, as if reminded that the justice system could be both fair and human. Judge Harrison cleared his throat, ready to resume the docket. But before calling the next case, he paused and addressed the gallery. "Let this be a reminder to us all," he said, his voice carrying gentle authority. "True justice requires us to look carefully at the evidence, to listen fully to each case, and to remember that every person who enters this courtroom has a story that deserves to be heard." After the final case concluded, Judge Harrison remained at his bench, reviewing the morning's events. The courtroom had emptied gradually, but echoes of the day's proceedings lingered in the sunlit chamber. He studied the security footage from Sarah's case once more, noting details he had initially overlooked in his haste to clear the docket. In the courthouse lobby, Sarah found herself surrounded by a small group of citizens and attorneys, all eager to discuss the Children's Hospital project. She listened attentively to their questions, her briefcase still tucked neatly under her arm. "The traffic review was actually one of our biggest challenges," she explained, sketching a quick diagram on her notepad. "We needed to ensure emergency vehicles could access the facility quickly while maintaining safe pedestrian zones for families. Lisa approached with her now-awake toddler, who was proudly wearing an "I visited City Hall" sticker that Sarah had quietly retrieved from her briefcase earlier. "Mayor Mitchell," she said, "would the hospital have a dedicated pediatric emergency room? We usually drive 2 hours to reach one." "Yes, absolutely," Sarah answered, her face brightening. "In fact, we've designed separate entrances for emergency and routine care to make access easier for families in crisis. Would you like to see the preliminary layouts?" As Sarah shared the plans, Judge Harrison emerged from his chambers, his robe exchanged for a suit jacket. He paused at the sight of the impromptu gathering, observing the natural leadership quality that Sarah exhibited. The morning's encounter had sparked something in him, a reminder of why he had first pursued a career in law. "Mayor Mitchell," he called softly, approaching the group. "A moment, if you would." Sarah excused herself gracefully and met the judge halfway across the lobby. The morning light streaming through the high windows cast a warm glow on the marble floor between them. "Your Honor," she acknowledged with a respectful nod. "I've been reviewing our court procedures," he began, his tone thoughtful. "Your case today highlighted some areas where we might improve our approach to traffic violations and evidence review." Sarah listened intently as the judge continued. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss how the upcoming hospital project might affect our traffic court procedures. Your perspective would be valuable." "I would be happy to help, Your Honor," Sarah replied. "In fact, we're forming a community advisory board for the project. Having representation from the judicial system would be invaluable." From across the lobby, Officer Reynolds approached, still in uniform, but with a notably different demeanor than during the traffic stop. "Mayor Mitchell, Judge Harrison," he greeted them both. "I've been thinking about that intersection. With the hospital coming in, maybe we should review our patrol patterns, focus more on safety than citations." Sarah smiled warmly. "That's exactly the kind of proactive thinking we need. Would you be interested in joining our safety planning committee? We're particularly concerned about emergency vehicle access routes." The officer straightened, clearly moved by the invitation. "I would be honored, Mayor. My sister's kids had to be airlifted to the Children's Hospital in Capital City last year. Having one here, it would change lives." As the three continued their discussion, the lobby's atmosphere hummed with possibility. What had begun as a simple traffic citation had evolved into something far more significant, a reminder that every interaction carried the potential for positive change. 3 months later, the morning sun cast long shadows across the vacant lot at Maple and 4th. A crowd had gathered for the Children's Hospital groundbreaking ceremony, their excited chatter filling the crisp morning air. Rows of white chairs faced a small podium, and a bright blue banner proclaimed, "Building Hope Together." Sarah stood slightly apart from the crowd, taking in the moment. She wore the same navy suit from that memorable court appearance, now accessorized with a silver shovel pin, a gift from her staff to commemorate the occasion. Mr. Chen's granddaughter had created beautiful architectural sketches for the event program, her young talent already shining through. "Quite a different view from the last time we were here," Judge Harrison's voice came from behind her. He had traded his judicial robes for a business suit, and he carried a hard hat with Community Advisory Board printed on the side. "Indeed it is," Sarah smiled, turning to greet him. "Though I still make a complete stop at that sign every time." The judge chuckled, his laugh warming the morning air. "Our traffic court numbers are down 30% since we implemented the new review procedures. Turns out, taking time to listen makes quite a difference." Officer Reynolds, now head of the Hospital District Safety Committee, approached with Lisa and her son. The toddler wore a tiny construction hat, proudly showing it off to everyone nearby. Lisa had joined the hospital's Family Advisory Council, her experience driving hours for pediatric care, making her input invaluable. "The new traffic patterns are working beautifully," Reynolds reported, gesturing to the freshly painted crosswalks. "We've had 0 incidents since the installation of the smart traffic lights last month." Sarah noticed more familiar faces in the crowd. The court clerk who had brought the tablet that day was chatting with other city employees. Several attorneys from the courthouse had joined the hospital's pro bono program, helping families navigate medical and legal challenges. Even Mr. Chen had come, beaming with pride as people praised his granddaughter's drawings. As Sarah took her place at the podium, she caught sight of a group of medical students touring the site. They would be part of the hospital's first residency program, bringing new energy and expertise to the community. The project had grown far beyond its original scope, becoming a symbol of what was possible when people worked together. "Good morning," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the gathering. "Today marks more than just the beginning of a building. It represents the power of looking beyond first impressions, of taking time to understand each other's stories." Judge Harrison nodded from his seat in the front row, a subtle acknowledgement of their shared journey. Sarah continued, "This hospital will serve thousands of families, but its foundation was built on small moments, a traffic stop that became a lesson in listening, a courtroom encounter that sparked community dialogue, and countless individuals who chose to see possibilities rather than problems." As she lifted the ceremonial shovel, Sarah caught a glimpse of the stop sign that had started it all. It stood as a quiet reminder that sometimes the most meaningful changes begin with simply taking a moment to stop, look around, and see the potential for something better. The first spadeful of earth turned over, glinting in the morning light. In that moment, Sarah knew that the true success of the children's hospital wouldn't just be measured in medical outcomes, but in the strengthened bonds of a community that had learned to look past titles and see each other as partners in progress.